Welcome in, everyone. Good evening. This is No Judgment Here. I am your host, Tish Ross. Gosh, thank you guys for all coming in. I so am grateful that you guys are here to support Jan and as well as, of course, my podcast. But I just have to say that if you uh, have some tissues nearby, you might want to grab them. I know I say this word, but I mean it. I don't want it to sound overused, but I mean it with my whole heart and soul. How honored I am that my guests come on and share their stories and really hard times and difficult times, and they share their testimonies and or how they are moving through the trials and tribulations, or how they got through. And so we are not doctors, we're not counselors, we are just regular, everyday people that have a story to tell, just like you do. And so I had the honor to listen to Jan's story prior to her coming on. And I have to tell you that, man, I almost lost it when she was sharing because of how, number one, how beautifully she shares it. And she's so grace filled. And I think my heart was breaking, but I think what really choked me up a lot is hearing how faithful and how strong Jan was and is, but as she was through the entire ordeal. And while it happened, a while back, it's still such a great story, a great testimony. It always will be. And I know that tonight she's going to do some good for whomever listens to this podcast. I know that you guys will be blessed for sure. So I welcome you. I'm going to go in really fast and just say hello to those of you that are already on. A lot of times in my podcast, that's why I rely so much on my moderators. I am so involved and engrossed and really focused on my guest that I not neglect, but I tend to, just not try to lose track of what my guests are saying. And so sometimes my moderators will ask questions or let me know that there's a question, or I'll try to look over there, but I welcome everybody in. So Miriam Bimler, welcome in. LaDonna Kickapoo Crafty Cat, I'm glad that you are here. Gail Southern Living, thanks for being here. Eileen, thank you for being here. Eileen, welcome to my kitchen. And let me see, Piggy, thank you for being here. Piggy's Piddles, Freedom Redbird is here. Adventures with Outdoor Eagle, thank you for coming in and showing your support. Josh for Sherman's Family Farm is here. Thank you guys for sharing it out. I appreciate it. Full Blown Country, Pooch is here. O'Rourke's Littlefield, good evening. I'm glad that you're here. Let's see. B&S Odyssey. Molly, Pest Hunter's Best Catch. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. MT Homestead is here too. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Jan in. Her story is amazing. And let's see here. Oh, there's Gary with Jailbait and Tackle Outdoors. Thanks for coming in. All right, Jan, I'm going to bring you in, my friend, and I'm going to let you get started. We have so much to share. Welcome in.
Hi, thanks for having me, Tish, and for letting me share my testimony.
Of course, I'm honored. I'm honored to have you.
We talked about some statistics,
Mm-hmm.
and the most current statistics I could find was on missing children was from 2021. Domestic kidnapping is 81. Duration for domestic kidnapping is 81 days. International is 42 months. 43 to 58% of children's kidnappings are from the mothers. 33% are dads, and 9% are other relationships or relatives.
Mm-hmm.
Every 40 seconds, I'm sorry, I can't see very close. Approximately 2,300 kids are missing or abducted in the U.S. Parents are accountable for 90% of the abductions. Worldwide, 8 million children are abducted each year. 8 million, y'all. Can
Wow.
you imagine? I can imagine. I went through it. So here's my story. Um, about 45, 46 years ago, I went through a really bad divorce. And I'm going to skip a lot of the details because I wasn't innocent. But I will give you this caveat that no matter what you're going through in a divorce, there's no justification to steal a child from a parent, no matter
Mm,
who you are. You cannot justify it. And it's vindictive and it's cruel, and it it came real close to killing me. So, as a child of God, I always had that solid foundation. I always knew that He had my back, even when I walked away, even when I looked away and did things I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing. He was there,
mhm.
and He constantly showed Himself through my journey.
Yes.
So I had got a job. I went to work and I came home, and my children weren't in the house, and my ex-husband was there with his brother-in-law, and they proceeded to tell me that I was no longer going to live there. And I said, well, I don't have anywhere to go. And they told me that that wasn't their problem. And they allowed me to spend the night. And in the morning, we had one car. And I said, well, I'm going to work. He said, no, you're not taking the car. They got in the car and they passed me as I walked to downtown Houston to my job that I had for about a month.
Mm,
And I hitchhiked from East Houston to downtown Houston. And a guy picked me up. He had a sawed off shotgun on the floorboard. And I was like, oh dear,
mm,
oh dear, this is not going to end well. And I literally thought that was going to be the end of my life.
mhm,
He pulled in an alleyway and he wanted me to perform sexual things. And I told him, no, what I'm going to do is he locked the doors. I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the door. And as I'm talking, I'm doing it. And I'm going to walk out of this vehicle. And I did. And as I walked out of the vehicle, I saw a bus pulled up, and I ran as fast as I could to the bus, hopped on the bus, just in a full blown panic, crying, screaming, telling him what had happened. And
mhm,
in the meantime, the guy pulls up behind us on the bus and follows me in the bus. And
mhm.
the bus driver called into dispatch and he got pulled over. The bus driver dropped me off at the door of my job. I walked into my job and I got laid off. So I had the clothes on my back. I had a shirt, pants, underwear, bra, socks, and shoes
Mhm,
to my name. Nowhere to live. And and the other thing is they told me my children were at my sister-in-law's house. And so I call my ex, I was married to at the time, and I said, well, I need to get the kids. He said, you're not getting the kids. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not getting the kids? Those are my children. And he said, nope, you're not getting the kids. We've assigned a mediator. So thus began my whirlwind. And I called uh, I called so many people trying to get my children back, and they said, no, it's a domestic thing. You don't have a court order. You don't have this. You don't have that. And um, we go to court, we get shared custody. I had called a friend I knew I just met these friends, and they came and picked me up from work and allowed me to stay there. And so I basically clawed and scratched my way, and I found another job at a bowling alley, and I worked there, and I saved up $500 to buy a car. And in the meantime, I couldn't see my children, and it took a couple months, and I couldn't see my children. And I would call and talk to them when they would answer the phone.
Mhm.
And it was just like torment day in and day out,
Now,
because
Jan, how old were the children at that time, and how old were you?
6 and 3, and I was like, let's see, 22,
Mhm.
23.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they were
And
at your sister-in-law's?
they were at my sister-in-law's.
Okay.
And then time goes by, and I'm just trying to get my life together, and you know get things together so I can get my kids back.
Mhm.
Little did I know that that wasn't going to happen. And that was like my one goal in life, was to get my kids back. And so I worked at the bowling lane for quite a while, and I went I had visitation, so I'd go visit them. And at first it was fine. I mean, I got to visit and see them, and they were like, "Well, when are we coming home, Mommy?" And I said, as soon as we can sort this out. We're trying to sort it out. And we went to court. Of course, I told you that we got a divorce, and we had shared custody. So I was supposed to have them every third week, and
Mhm.
then they would have them the rest of the weeks. And that never happened. So eventually I would go, and, I had to drive quite a ways to get there.
Mhm.
And I live in Southwest Houston, and they lived in far North Houston. And the last two times I saw them, um, my daughter told me, "Mommy, we can't tell you anything. We can't say anything because we'll get beat." And I said, "Well, that's not going to happen." And she said, "Yeah, she beats us. And she makes us hide in our room when you come over, so you can't tell we're here." So of course, I'm ticked, and I confront
Yes.
her, and I said, "If you ever keep my children away from me, it's not going to be good."
Mhm.
And she said, "Oh, I don't do that. I never would do that," and blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, so the past two visits, the first visit, I drove and no one answered, but I could see the curtains move, and I had been there before. So I knew. I was telling Tish, maybe there is a fan. I'm trying to justify it in my head. Maybe there's a fan moving the curtains.
Mhm.
Maybe it's something, maybe a dog or a cat, I don't know. So okay, they're not there. And the neighbor tells me, "Well, they're home," because I go to the neighbors, and I said, "All right, do they live?" Because the grass is now getting higher. It hasn't been mowed, and the grass is getting higher. And they said, "No, they're there." And so I pound on the door, and I'm like, "I know you're there, answer the door." No answer. So finally, about an hour later, I give up, because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want my
Right.
kids eh, tormented, if you will. I don't want them to get spanked for something they're not accountable for.
Mhm.
And so I go home, I call, no one answers. And this went on all the time. And So I went back again for my visit, and we talked. They said, oh, they were sorry, they had something come up, they had to go into town that last visit. And I'm like, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Mm.
I'm like, don't lie to me. And so I go in for my next visit, and the grass is up to my knees, and there you could still tell someone was living there, but there is no one home.
Mm.
And I I knocked on the door, I beat on the door, I walked around the house, and no one was home. No one was there. And so, uh, I tried calling, and now their phones are disconnected. I can't get a hold of anybody. And so I call my ex in laws, and they're like, no, as far as we know, they're still there. And I was like, okay, well, they didn't answer the phone. I'm getting a disconnect, and
Mhm.
they just blew it off like maybe they just they didn't pay the bill. And so um, that was the last time before. 2 times before was the last time I saw my children, and I went back another time, and now the house is empty
Mm.
and there's nobody there. I called the police, I called the sheriff, I called uh, the attorney general, anyone to try to get me help, because I had court documents that I had shared custody.
Right.
And, you know, I was supposed to be allowed visitations, and it wasn't supposed to be like I just got to visit and that was it. I was supposed to have my children physically,
Mhm.
but they
Mhm.
never allowed them to come. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going to play the game for a little while and do all the things and try to not be the difficult parent and put them through more turmoil. That was
Right.
my goal. They had already been through enough.
Mhm.
So they're gone. Can't find them. My in laws don't know where they are at the time. My Mima, who is my my ex mother in law's mother, didn't know where they were. No one knew where they were. Months go by, and I had a very, very, very close relationship with my ex in laws and my ex Mima. I call her Mima.
Mhm.
And she told me that uh, they knew where they were, but they couldn't tell me because the I don't even like to call her the stepmother, but my ex-husband's wife
Mhm.
would beat them and they would never be allowed. They were threatened that they would never be allowed to see the kids again if I knew. And I said, well, are they okay? And she
Mhm.
said, yes, they're okay. So um, I had I had a decision to make. I called private investigators, and they wanted so much
Mhm.
money I didn't have, working at
Right.
a bowling alley. And time goes on. We're going to fast forward this. Time goes on. We're several years into it. And when my ex husband and I had separated and divorced, well, he had hit me, and I moved to Oklahoma, and I got a job at the phone company.
Mhm.
And I lived there for 9 months before we tried to reconcile, before all this happened. So I give you some back history.
Gotcha. Mhm.
So um, I had got a job at the phone company, and I worked there. And then when we tried to reconcile, I quit my job there and moved back to Texas. And so I finally I was just desperate. I got very, very ill, and I lost my job. Well, I quit my job at the bowling alley because I had to have emergency surgery. And so after I had the surgery, then I had to quit my job because I was not capable of working through that time.
Right.
And I called the phone company back in Oklahoma, and I talked to my old boss, and her name was Phyllis, and she was my angel, and she knew everything I had ever been through, everything. And she was just so like a mother to me. And I
Mhm.
told her what had happened, and she said, "Well, have you got your life in order?" And I said, "Yes, I have. I'm trying really hard, but I need a job because when I get my children back, they are going to be proud of me and what I was able to overcome. I want them to be proud of me."
Yes.
So she said, "I'll call you back. It may be an hour." And she called me back and she said, "I got you on the rehire list now. And so go ahead, and I want you to hit this link and apply, and we'll get you on board as ASAP." So within 3, 4 days, I had a job back at the phone company in Texas.
Wow.
And sorry. Uh,
No, no, you don't have to apologize, Jan. This is a lot. It's
yeah.
hard.
So I got my job back, and I worked there for 10 years. Everyone knew what I had been through
Mhm.
because there was a big possibility that I was going to be headlong in a court battle for my children. And I
Okay.
needed them to know that.
Right. Mhm.
And I had so much love and support and encouragement. And in the meantime, I had a emotional breakdown. I had a nervous breakdown because I would walk through the malls and the stores, and like I was telling Tish, you hear a child giggle, or you hear a child talk, and it sounds just like your child. And you're like, "Oh my God." And I would run through the stores and the malls, and I would turn around because the back of their head looked like my daughter or my son. And I would run in front of them, thinking, "Is that them?"
Mm.
But it was never them.
I can't imagine because you know what, Jan? I think for any parent or grandparent or babysitter that's listening or will listen, I'll speak for myself. There was a time when I was in a card shop and my son was right next to me. We were looking at cards, and just for a split second, I couldn't find him, and my heart was beating so fast, and it was a big store, and I don't know. Well, I do know how you got through it, but my heart was pounding because, like, "Oh my God, where's my son? Where's my son?" Hearing kids talk, like you said, running, looking, and the fact that, and yes, we're all human, and yes, we all, I mean, I can speak, for myself too, but I'm sure every single person here has, we are not perfect, and we question God, we ask God, why is this happening?
Hmm.
But again, you have such an incredible story, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was
I'm
just the
glad you
thought
did. I
that
have a nose.
you had been without your children for so long, And to actually hear a child laughing, or to hear a child crying, or to see a child whose the back of their head looks like your own, I can't even imagine. Um,
It was hard. It was hard. And so time goes on, and I'm calling all these private investigators, and I'm trying to get help, and they're like wanting all this money and attorneys, and oh my God, it was ridiculous. I couldn't even, I'm thinking $200 I could save for 3 months and maybe have it, and because I didn't make a lot of money back then. I made 157.50 every 2 weeks, So it was like, and
right.
then I get rent and car and gas and insurance and life, electric.
Absolutely.
So I became very bitter and very angry. I did drugs. I got into alcohol. I did all the things that
Mhm,
not could numb me and that could, so I thought, carry me through the torture.
mhm,
And when I had a nervous breakdown. I actually had two, but the first one, I just bucked through it, and I was like, could could be in a candy ass, if you will, and
yeah,
move.
yeah,
You got to move forward. This isn't the time to fall apart. You can't fall apart now. Your children need you, and this was my soul. I had tunnel vision. I had tunnel vision, and what everything I did evolved around the future with my children.
mhm,
And I just prayed that they would be okay to receive me when I and if I ever saw them. And I was telling Tish yesterday, one day I was reading my Bible and doing my Bible study, and in the Bible it talks about uh, I I will give you children, and your children, I will give you posterity. And I didn't know what posterity meant, but it means your grandchildren and your great grandchildren and your great
mm,
great grandchildren. And I was sort of ticked off at the time, and I'm like, sure, God,
mhm.
how's that going to happen? You know, yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then I proceeded to break down and cry, and I was like, Lord, if this is real, you got to move. I mean, I'm doing everything I can do. You got to move
Mm,
because this is so much bigger than me, And to me, the whole time, because I'm a Christian and I believe in God with all my heart, soul, body, and spirit. I trust the Lord in everything I think and do and say. And I was like, Satan is trying to take me down,
mm,
and I am not going to let him. But I cannot do this without you, Father. I
yeah,
cannot even begin to comprehend how I can get through this without your hand being involved. And I was flooded with this peace, which was crazy because I was a nutcase at the time. I mean, I was just so broken and torn,
yes. Mhm,
I felt so beat up. And I just, I don't know, that day changed everything for me. And when I recognized who was my enemy, who was trying to bring me down, things changed for me.
mm, mhm,
And I thought back in my past, and I said, he's been at it all my life. You
mm,
know, I I went through many, many things in my past that haven't, well, I've talked about it in passing, but things that most people could not survive and go through this.
mm,
And I I just got this peace. So we're getting close to the 10 years. And it's probably about 8.5 years. I mean, I went back to college. Well, I went to college. I had never been to college. I went to junior college, took
Mhm.
sign language and English, American and English sign language, and English literature. Just so, oh, I went back and got my GED after 15 years.
Mm.
And then I went to college. And I just wanted to have something to keep me motivated, to keep me focused, to keep me driven. Um, so my intention was to go back and get a degree in insurance fraud for law enforcement.
Mhm.
And I've always my sister-in-law was in law enforcement, and I was always like, that's what I need to either be an attorney or I need to be in law enforcement. So uh, but the pay wasn't any better than what I was doing. So I started my own business, my own cleaning, residential and commercial cleaning business, and at the time it was just residential, and then it grew, and uh, it's probably about the ninth year, and
Okay.
all I'm doing is working on getting Jan healthy. The ninth
And
year.
so, let me ask you this really quick, Jan. And so it in these 9 years, you have had no idea where your children are, and you haven't been able to speak to them at all?
No, that's no. The, about actually, yeah, I sort of skipped that, didn't I? The probably going at 8.5 years, I said I had a relationship with my ex-in-laws. Well, I really didn't talk to my ex-in-laws anymore, but Mima and I talked all the time,
Mhm.
and, I would call her, and she said, "Don't say a word, just listen." And the kids would be over there, and I'd get to hear them.
Mm.
And, some may think that's torturous, and why didn't I go over there and bust the doors down and, uh, because I couldn't and I wouldn't. There's a process, a legal process you have to go through. Even though I shared custody, you cannot go in there and do things like that.
Right, right.
I called the sheriff. I said, "My kids are here. I haven't seen them for 8.5 years, blah, blah, blah." He said, "That's a domestic issue. You have to take it to court." That's
Mhm.
what I hit every time, every single time. It was quite traumatizing. It was like every time I tried to reach out to someone who I thought could help, I got re-traumatized. And it was pretty sad. So I called Mimo. I'd hear my kids, I'd break down, I'd cry, you know, and one day I said, "Mimo, I got to talk to him. I have to talk to him."
Mhm.
And she said, "Okay." And she let me, my son didn't, he was so young, he didn't really know who I was. He knew of me, but he didn't know me as mommy.
Mhm.
And so she held the phone up and by their ears, and I got to tell them I love them. And my daughter said, "When are you coming to get us?" And I said, "Honey, I'm working so hard. I'm working so hard to come get you. I haven't ever forgotten you when they said that you hate us and that you don't want us." And I said,
Mhm.
"That's not true." So they had told my children that I signed a paper and I said I hated them and I don't ever want to see them again. And they showed that to my children. And I said, "That's not true. Mommy would never do that.
Mm.
I love you." And little did I know my little tenacious daughter, the whole 10 years was trying to bust loose from their house and escape and come home to me because we had spent the most time together. She was
Mhm.
from my first marriage. She wasn't even his daughter.
Wow.
And this his ex-wife would show my son a little bit of favoritism, but not much. She got she got the brunt of the beatings. She got the brunt of the abuse. They were anorexic at one time, and no one in the school cared. She had me red tagged. I couldn't, uh, even if I found them and I went up to where they were, there was nothing that I could do because they had the school buffaloed into
Yeah.
thinking I was this horrific person. So one night, I'm sleeping and I have this dream. I'm like, we can't find the kids. I found one investigator that looked. He said, I can't find them. They've gone dark. I don't know where they are.
Mhm.
And I said, okay. I, I didn't, he did it just to be kind, but he couldn't find them. And I had this dream that they were in the country in a trailer. And I knew the trailer. I just didn't realize where it was. I had been there one time in my life when we were
Mhm.
married. And babe, will you close this door, please? Um, I called Mima and I said, Mima, how are you? And how are the kids? And she said, fine. And everyone's doing good. She said, they didn't tell them they talked to you. I talked to them and I said, okay, because I don't want them to get hurt.
Mhm.
Um, then I told her about my dream and she gasped like I've never heard anyone gasp before. And I go, are you okay? Because she was elderly. I said, are you okay, Mima?
Mhm.
She goes, Jan, only God the Father could have given you that dream. Do you know where that trailer is? And I said, no. She said, that's the Deer Lease trailer. And I was like, oh, yes, they're in Huntsville. She said, yes, they
Wow.
are.
My gosh. Wow.
So I spent the next, uh, I don't even know how long it took me, months maybe. And I finally found a private investigator who would help me. And I told him my story. He said, my God, I don't know how you're still alive. I said,
Yeah.
oh, but for the grace of God go I.
Mhm. Mhm.
He said, I'm going to find your children for you, and I'm not stopping till I do.
Mm.
And I don't know if I believed him, but he called me back. It wasn't maybe a week later. He said, I found them.
My gosh.
And I go, oh my God, where are they? And he said, they're in Huntsville. And I was like, oh Lord, you've just been with me the whole time.
Yes.
He knew I had to get Jan in order first.
Yes.
He knew that I was going to be useless to them if I didn't get me together. And I was like, oh my God, praise God. I mean, I was just praise God, praise God, praise God. Hallelujah.
Absolutely.
I was so happy. He said, now hold on. I've gone a little further for you. I said, what? He said, you are red balled on the school and have to get a lawyer. You will never get your kids back without a lawyer. And he said, you have to. He said, as for me, my services are free
Wow.
because no one should ever have to go through what you've been through. And I lost it. I'm just like, oh, wow. Because at that rate now, what he's done is probably in the five to $10,000 range.
Mhm, mhm.
I
And there's
don't,
God again.
yeah, I don't even remember his name, and that's really bad. And I guess he was just the angel God put there for me,
Absolutely.
my children. And I went in Seabrook, Texas, or Clear Lake, Texas, and I found this little Spitfire lawyer named Dahlia, and I told her my story, and she said, "I got this. We're going after him. No one
Mm,
should ever have their children kidnapped like that." And she said, "Do you want to press charges?" I said, "I want my children back. That's all I want. I want my children back."
mm,
So between her and the PI, um, they got the red tag moved and all this. They were just the next week going to serve the school, remove my children, and return them to me.
mm.
And I get a phone call. And it's my ex-sister-in-law, who is very instrumental, by the way, in having my children removed from me and talking my ex-husband into thinking that was a great idea.
Wow.
And she calls me and she said, "Jan, I just want to let you know that I have someone who wants to talk to you." And my heart sank. And I said, "Well, who is that?" And she said, "Jessica. She's run away." And that was
Just
my,
because you're here.
and I said, "Well, I find it very funny that you work so hard to steal my children from me, and now you want me to talk to her because you don't want her." And she repented, she apologized, and my job is to forgive her.
Mm,
And that was my job. And I said, "Okay, I forgive you. Now let's talk. Let me talk to my daughter." And my daughter gets on the phone and she said, "Mama, I need to come home."
mm.
She was 15, about to be 16. And I said, "Honey, you name the day and time and it's on." And she was like, "Now." So I said, "Okay." So my roommate worked in a psych hospital and we talked, and she said, "Jan, she needs to detox. She needs to decompress and have a safe spot before she lives with you."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." So, oh man, I skipped a whole part. I skipped a whole
Mhm.
part. So I had my nervous breakdown. Oh, I gotta back up, y'all. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No, no.
So
But I'm glad that you remembered.
yeah, uh, before, after I went, before I went to college, I had a nervous breakdown. I couldn't take it anymore. It took everything, the life out of me, and I just couldn't take it. I had a nervous breakdown, and I was rooming with my friend who worked in the psych hospital, and I was sitting in a corner with a knife to my heart, and I was she wasn't my roommate then. I was remarried, and we were separated, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm sitting in a corner with a knife to my heart. I can't do it anymore. I'm done." She goes,
Mhm.
"No, you're not doing this. You got kids. You need to get back." And she had been through most of the journey with me, so she knew. And I said, "No, they're better off without me. They're better off." She goes, "No." And So I got in my car, put the knife in my trunk, and I drove around 80 miles an hour around a 25-mile-an-hour neighborhood, cursing at God,
Mhm.
screaming at him. Just, I was so angry and so sick of life and so sick of everything. I was so bitter.
Mhm.
And I go back, and there's this spunky little psychiatrist at my door and come knocking on my door. And I dumped all my pot down the toilet because I was done with that. I said, well, I ain't going to need that if I'm dead, you know? And I proceeded to talk to her and telling told her, I'm done. I'm done.
Mhm.
I don't have nothing else. I'm never going to get my kids back. It's just been BS the whole time. I've been living just a fantasy, and I've got too many people in the family against me. And
Mm.
she said, bull crap, bull crap. So I walk up to I finally concede, and I said, I'm driving. You're not driving me. No, ain't no one, and the police are there with her because it's, suicide call. The police are
Right.
there. And I said, no one's driving me. This is me. If either I'm going to walk in this hospital free and walk out free, or I ain't going. You can forget it. And I said, okay, well, one will drive in front of you, one driving back. I said, that's fine, but you're not going to dictate what I do with my life now.
Mm. Mhm.
And when I got to the door, I said, I'm not walking out of here until I am completely healed and changed. And I'm not walking out. So I stayed in that hospital for 31 days. And every time the insurance company tried to kick me out, it's a whole new age hospital too, by the way. And all my doctors were born again Christians, all of them. And every time the insurance company wanted to kick you out because you're not suicidal and it's costing them money, my psychologist would call a psychiatrist, and she'd say, "Oh no, darling, she's suicidal. She cannot go. She cannot go." And they say, "Okay," and I get another week. So 31 days, I busted my butt. It was balls to the wall. I had nothing but tunnel vision to get Jan healthy and to come out of the dark, deep hole that Satan had tried to dig me into. When I
Mhm.
walked in there, the first guy I met, he said, Jan, there's nothing wrong with you. The thing is you're in a pot. And he does this, and he said, you're the plant, but you're in poisonous soil.
Mm.
We're going to change your soil so you can grow. And I go, well, you better rinse those roots off because it's really bad. And he laughed. He said, you're going to do this. I know, I can tell you're going to do this. And so I did. I went in there. I graduated patient of the year. And I walked out a new person. I was telling Tish, I drove my friends bonkers because I was so healthy and so happy. And I had the tools for once in my life to overcome all the crap I had been through in my life. And I was like, watch out, world, get out of my way because I'm coming through. And then that's when all the balls started rolling. Everything started rolling and coming together. And then my daughter calls, and so I put her in the same hospital, and she had the same godly people to help her get through it. And she
Because
comes
that's a
home.
lot to get through. I mean, that's a lot in terms of her childhood, and, a lot of people may wonder, because she was not his biological daughter. I mean, that truly is kidnapping. She was yours from
Yeah,
another husband, and some people might think, "Why didn't you just go and get her?" But that's, from someone who's been through some similar trauma, it that only adds to the trauma. If it's for the sibling, I mean, what? You're gonna take one kid and then leave the other? There's just a lot of additional trauma that can affect a child, and there's no timing like God's timing. And as difficult as it, I'm sure, was for you wanting to, go and get her, but it's it just doesn't seem like it would make sense. I mean, I think it causes more damage than it would good.
It would have been devastating.
Mhm,
So I put my I get my daughter
mm,
and she goes into the hospital and we're all meeting, my lawyer and all the psychiatrists, psychologists, all the whole staff was there in the room, and my ex uh and his wife.
mhm,
And she proceeds to tell me, "Well, you can have your daughter, but you're not getting your son." And I looked her in the eyes and I said, "Let me tell you something. I gave birth to him. He's my son,
mm,
and you will never have him ever again. And if you open your mouth one more time, I will have you arrested and put in jail for the next 15 years of your life for kidnapping."
mm,
And she never said another word. She never saw my son again. He was he stayed with my ex-in-laws,
mm,
and people are like, "Well, why didn't you press charges? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that?" Well, I could have done a lot of things. First of all, why would, after what my children went through for 10 years of their life of the abuse and neglect, why would I put them through another torturous trial of having to appear in court and go through all that
mhm,
ever again? I would never have ever put them through that. Yeah, I wanted to rip them a new one. Trust me. I mean, you want to take vengeance, and that was for years probably what drove me, was the vengeance I was going to get on them, and God said, "No, vengeance is mine." And I
mm,
told Tish yesterday, I said, "You know, I could have done a million things to them. I could have made their life so miserable, but what would it have accomplished? Because there's nothing I could do here on this earth that God's not going to do to them in heaven."
absolutely.
And so I chose to forgive.
Mhm,
And I don't use that word lightly. Forgiveness means it heals me.
right.
It's for me, not for them. It was for me, because if I didn't forgive them, I carry that bitterness and that anger and that strife for the rest of my life. And what does it accomplish? Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. And so I chose forgiveness. Uh, it's not easy. It likes to rear its ugly head every now and then. And I'm like, no, that's under the blood, man. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So,
Right on, I'm serious. I'm sure, and I can speak again for my own experience. There are times when it tries to rear its ugly head, and then I'm like, "Nope, giving it back. I'm not that's not going to." You said something, yesterday that was really amazing. You said so many things, in fact, your whole story, obviously, but you said that you had a choice. It was Satan or Jesus, that you
yeah,
could, you know, take the revenge or continue to want to do something to them, or you can allow Jesus to do his thing, and like you said,
yeah,
vengeance, the Lord says, vengeance is mine. And it
yeah,
is.
yeah. I mean, you think about it. I was telling you yesterday, I had found this little plaque. It's by someone anonymous, and it says, "Life is a matter of choice, not a matter of chance."
Mhm,
And I don't know why that struck me so strongly, but I was like, yeah, I mean, it is. It's all about your choices. I mean, things are going to pop up, and, you know, by chance things are going to happen, but that does not, your circumstances do not define you. You define your circumstances. Was I going to let my circumstance define me and make me a bitter old woman, angry
Mm,
at the world, hating everyone? Or was I going to walk on faith and the power of the Holy Spirit that's in me and love? What
mm,
was I going to choose? Bitterness, darkness, anger, strife? Or was I going to choose love, faith, kindness, and hope? And my story is about love, faith, kindness, and hope and
mm,
forgiveness,
mhm.
because my ex-husband lives with my son now. Now my son knows all who he is, but he feels sorry for him, and I honor him for being able to do that. I honor him because even though it wasn't the best for him, he honors his dad. And I don't talk bad about his dad. I don't talk
Mhm,
bad about her. I my children and I, when I got them back, now my son, he my daughter turned 16 when I got her. And then my son was 13. So
mhm.
he wanted to stay with mama and papa, which he did. And I let him do that. He visited. I mean, don't get me wrong. We saw each other all the time. He'd call and I'd be there. In a drop of a hat, I'd be there. And so he spent time with us. He just didn't live with me. And
Mhm.
that was okay. I was okay with that because that's what he needed. Now, my daughter was a different story. She needed me. We were
Mhm.
together before we ever met her stepdad. And we went through another hell and back through healing. And let me tell you, you just don't get your children back after 10 years and them telling the exes telling them that you hate them and that you're evil and that you gave up custody and you gave up this and you're the wicked witch of the West.
Right.
And then they meet you and you're not, but their mind is so confused and angry. And the children who have been abused and abducted, they tend to side with those who abused them and abducted them, not the
Yeah.
person who did not. So don't be fooled. I was the mean one. Even though I didn't do anything wrong. I did not kidnap my children. I did not seclude my children. I did my best. I did at the time what I knew to do best and tried my best. But
Mhm,
I was the bad guy. And it took years
mhm.
for us to heal. My son is 45 and my daughter is 48 now. And we are like this. There is nothing that will break us. We have gone through the fire and come out unscathed. And
Mm.
I really think of Meshach, uh, Meshach, what is it, Meshach?
Oh gosh.
Abednego, Sha
Yes, yes,
Rock.
yes.
Oh, you know the one I'm talking about. I think about
I
that, how
do.
they went into the fire, into the furnace, and we went into that furnace and we came out okay. But we had to work and scratch and claw and yell and scream and cuss and, cry. It it was horrific. And I thought, "Oh my God, what did I do? Did I do the right thing? Should I left them there?" I mean, but I had to, you know.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry, and it said, Bill Luke 29 says it's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's right. I
Thank you,
couldn't
Shadrach,
get them
Meshach.
all together. So,
I
Jen, let me
had her.
ask you this. Um, would it I asked you this yesterday, and I asked, "What do you feel about the lost 10 years?" And you had such an amazing response to that in
What
terms
was
of
it?
you said that God got you and the children through that, and that God blessed you abundantly by, um, after you guys went through all of the hell on earth, getting through the trauma, working through everything, that God has blessed you and the children's relationship abundantly.
He has, and that's so true. I didn't know if there was more. I knew what I had said, but I didn't know if there was more just in case. It might have been a trick question.
No.
Um, no, I mean, yes, of course, I grieved over I lost so much in those 10 years. I mean, school and just seeing them laugh and explore and learn, and we loved to garden together when they were little, and all the fabulous things that you do,
Mm,
trips, and, we camped a lot. We liked to camp and all the things that you didn't get to do.
mhm,
But then you gotta think of all the things you do get to do, and you create a new future. You
mm,
create a new, I guess, reality, and you can't look on what you didn't have. You have to look on what you have and thank God and be grateful for it because, if we keep looking back and saying, "Oh man, I could have had that car," and well, you don't. You don't.
right,
You know, I could have had my kids for the past 10 years and raised them and coddled them and loved them and took them to school and done all the things you do as a parent, but I didn't.
right.
And now what do I do with that? Do I get bitter and angry? Um, no, no, it's fruitless. It's fruitless. So, um, you you take what you have and you use what you have to use and you make this is such a cliche, but you make lemonade out of lemons,
Oh, that's
You
true, and you said too that God doesn't harm us. He doesn't harm us, he strengthens us.
yes.
And go ahead, Jan.
Well, so many people think that first thing out of their mouth is, "Why is God doing this to me?"
Mm,
Well, it ain't God doing it to God. God doesn't harm you. He said, "I bring no harm to you." He said, "I'm here with you always. I'll never leave you nor forsake you." And I mean, I just told you all the things he did. He never
yeah,
left me or forsook me, although it felt like it, because I'm a human and I
right,
don't always see spiritually. I'm not like that super spiritual guru that I can, see into
right,
God's mind. But he's always there to provide goodness if you just search him out. Satan is who wants to bring you down.
mhm,
The enemy, I don't even like using his name. I like calling him the enemy. He
right,
he likes to he's the one who's there to devour you and chew you up and grind you into bits and pieces. He's the one. And if you keep that in mind when you're feeling down or depressed or bummed out, that's not God.
right,
That's the enemy trying to break you. And that's how I saw this whole thing. He was trying to grind me up and break me because God knew he had a plan for me. He knew that he had a future for me and my children. And I had the tenacity
mm,
to say no. I said no to the enemy and I won. And God, I didn't win. God won.
that's
And
right.
I won by the power of God. And I don't get any glory and I don't get any honor and I don't want it. I all I know is my God never forsook me and he never left me and he gave me tenacity and I carry that to this day and I carry it with a smile and I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I have 5 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren now, and he gave me my posterity in the
Did.
deepest, darkest time of my life. He said, "I'm gonna give that to you," and I'm like, "Yeah, whatever," He did it. And I
Mhm.
had the most beautiful family in the whole wide world, and I adore them. And it's a victory. It's a
It
victory call.
is. It is.
I'm one
Oh
of
my gosh.
I am one of
Well,
the
this is when I wanted to start bawling yesterday because, telling your story is I mean, it's just so hard, so hard. But then what the part that gets me choked up is your your spirit now and your smile and your brightness and the fact, it just like I want to tell everybody about it, because of what you've been through and because of what God did for you. And you could see his hand all along the way as you're sharing your testimony. It's like, okay, yeah, that was God. And then you keep sharing. It's like, there was God, and I get chills from head to toe thinking of how close
yes,
God was to you.
yes. I mean, it's like the trail of tears, but in the end, there's a victory. There's
Mm,
there's a rejoicing, and there's a time, where we were able to dance and see God's hands and everything.
mm, mhm,
And I I don't I can't imagine going through this as a non-believer. I cannot
mm.
even fathom it because the struggles would have been so mighty and powerful. And I think
Yes.
a lot of people, yeah, I broke apart. But God even took a new age hospital and he turned my life around. So when my
Yeah.
daughter went in, I could help her turn her life around. And when my son needed to talk, and he could turn his life around, and
Mhm, mhm.
it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I am seeing the comments. I told Tish I wasn't going to read the comments, so I didn't get distracted. But y'all, thank you so, so much for being so supportive and loving. And my hope is that my testimony gives you strength if you're going through a trial or tribulation to recognize, is it God or is it the enemy? Or sometimes God takes us through the fire so we'll learn. He took
Mhm.
me through that fire to learn in many ways. I ain't giving the enemy all that credit. I'm
That's
saying
right.
God needed Jan to get her crap together. And uh it was a lot of God. There was a lot of, you know, when it came to my body and soul. And I felt like the enemy was trying to rip me into his side. And I was like, man,
Sure.
that ain't gonna happen. I mean, you know,
Well, Jan, I'm so grateful that you reached out and that you came on to share your story because I do know
yes,
that in all these comments that people are so supportive, so loving, so blessed. Everyone is just the comments are so positive. Our God is so wonderful and powerful. The enemy has no chance.
yes,
Um, God delivers all things to faith. This is from Josh Sherman's Family Farm. He says, God delivers all things to faith street. If we stay on faith, we will get his
yes.
blessing. If we move it, uh, the
I
comment
know the
just
comment
went out.
moved.
If we move to it, took too long, or I don't see the street, we will never get his blessing. That's so true. If we decide
Oh,
that we're going to take things in our own hands and we're so fed up, and God knows we get fed up. He
yeah,
knows. And like you said, he reined you back in.
yeah.
He had you on his path. And I'm so thankful to God that you stayed on his path because here you are sharing how good he is, and so that other people will know that he is and he doesn't forsake us and he doesn't hurt us. That's the enemy that hurts us.
Yes,
And
well,
so, Jen, I'm going to ask you one question before we hop off.
okay.
And of course, when we hop off, I don't know that you'll be able to see all the comments until maybe if you don't log out, but and maybe until tomorrow. But I'm going to ask you this question, the question I ask all of my guests, and that is, who is Jan today? Who are you today?
I am the daughter of the Most High God.
You are.
I love life. I am a giver. I am a lover of people. And I hope, above all things I do, that I can touch someone's life in a positive way. And that's really, I am the daughter of the Most High God. I just, that's
You
who I am.
are.
It
You are,
envelops.
my friend. You
Yeah.
are, and you have done so good today. It's so powerful. And everyone that listened, share out the podcast again to support Jan, to support the channel, yeah, but for I think the end hope is to give others hope in their
Yeah.
during their trial, during their despair. And
Yeah.
I thank you so much, Jan. I do. I thank you so much for coming on. I thank everyone that has come on to support Jan
Thank
and to be here for her. And we, in my podcast, that's why I just so rely on my moderators because I want to be fully focused on my guest and them telling their stories and the same with my guest. I like for my guests to not have to, I don't want to say not worry about the comments, but to stay focused on what the Lord has called them to do, and that is to share their testimony. So I appreciate you so much, Jan, and I appreciate everyone that came in. Thank you for your support, your comments, and your questions. And
you.
if you haven't had the chance to like and subscribe to Jan's channel, it's at Simply Jan Homestead. And if you haven't had the chance to subscribe and like and set all those bells and whistles to No Judgment Here with Tish Ross,
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
appreciate that as well. We have a lot of great testimonies, a lot of great stories from people just like you. So
Thank you
thank you
so
so
much
much,
for
Jan.
having me. I was so nervous, but I'm so glad I shared it and got through it. And my true hope, Tish, is that I was able to touch the heart of someone going through a trial right now
Mhm.
and give them hope and redirect their attention to God, to know that He is there and
Mhm.
He's got this. He's got this, y'all. I mean, when this I say when there's a hurricane, in the middle is the eye. Go to the eye. That's where the peace is. That's
Mhm.
where God is. He is the eye. He's the peace. So
He is.
anyway,
He is. Thank you, sweet friend. Oh my gosh, I just love you. And I'm honored. And again, I know I use that word a lot, but until I can find another one that has more meaning, I'll continue to say that I'm honored that you trusted me and to bring your story, and it's shared. Thank God it's out there. And Jan, I know
yeah.
that you have helped a lot of people. I know that you have.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
for
for
coming
having
on.
me. I love you and I adore you and Mike, and I can't wait to see you next month. It can't come fast
Exactly.
enough.
I can't wait either. Thank you for coming on, Jen. I hope that you have a good night. And everyone that listened and commented, we thank you and we appreciate you. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening as well. We'll see
Yes.
you guys next Monday.
Love
No
you.
judgment. Love you. Bye, Jan.
Bye bye.